Welcome to a brand new episode of Chiefs Wire TV. I'm Easton Jr. On today's episode, Chiefs Wire contributor Talon Graff breaks down Tamba Hali's career with the Chiefs. But first, we are introduced to two new members of the Chiefs secondary by Chiefs Wire managing editor Charles Goldman.
Charles Goldman here, managing editor of the Chiefs Wire. Today, I'm going to talk to you a bit about some newly added players that the Chiefs brought in to work in the secondary. First, let's start off with Mike Hughes, who the Chiefs acquired in trade with the Minnesota Vikings with just a late-round pick swap. They sent their sixth-round pick in 2022 to the Vikings, received the Vikings' seventh-round pick in return. And they also got Hughes. So pretty good trade in my eyes, assuming that Hughes works out. So Hughes is a guy that the Chiefs have been interested in for a very long time. They're actually targeting him in the second round of the 2018 NFL Draft. If you'll recall, the Chiefs didn't have a first-round draft pick in 2018 because of the Frank Clark trade. They sent that to the Seattle Seahawks in that trade. So the Chiefs were hoping that Mike Hughes would be someone who fell in the draft, that they'd have a chance at him in the second round. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So, Brett Veach, Mr. Aggressive here when it comes to trades, and he'd been monitoring Mike Hughes and his situation for the last couple of years, and of course, the Chiefs, they did a ton of pre-draft research on Hughes. They brought him in for a top 30 visit. They were paying really close attention to him at the University of Central Florida Pro Day. And Hughes kind of began his career at North Carolina, and an off-field incident saw him suspended from the team. So he ended up at Garden City Community College for a year. And then he ended up transferring to University of Central Florida for one season before entering the pros. So the Chiefs had to do a lot of background research on the off-field incident and the type of player that he was before that they felt comfortable, okay, this is a guy that we could take in the draft. Well, of course, they didn't have the chance to take him in the draft, but now they acquire him in trade. And with the Knights, Hughes was a standout corner and return specialist. So why was Hughes available for trade? Well, the 24-year-old hasn't exactly lived up to his first-round status as a first-round draft pick there. Over the past 3 seasons with the Vikings, Hughes appeared in just 24 games and had, I believe, 7 starts. And that's mostly due to injury. He tore his ACL, and he also had a neck injury that kind of ended his season a little bit early last year. So he did have some good production when he was on the field for the Vikings, but it was clear that he's a guy who needed that fresh start, and he's going to get that in Kansas City. So I think he's probably going to be figuring into the mix for the nickel corner spot, playing in the slot, but he can also play outside in a pinch if necessary. He did so in college. He's really solid in man coverage. Off man, he plays aggressive playing downhill. Look for him to potentially make his biggest mark, though. I know everyone's like defense, they want an offensive player, defensive player, but I think special teams is going to be where he is the most dynamic. He was just incredible as a punt and kick returner in college. He had combined 3 kick and punt returns for touchdowns with UCF in his single season there. And he hasn't had the same type of opportunities as a pro, mainly due to his health, but I think Dave Toub is going to be able to get the most out of him on special teams in Kansas City. Next up, I want to talk about Will Parks a little bit. Chiefs fans are probably familiar with him from his time with the Broncos. He spent the past 6 seasons, I believe, with the Broncos. He appeared in 66 career games and made 15 starts for the Broncos during that span. He's a phenomenal special teams player and a proven veteran backup at the position. And one thing that I think you're getting with Parks is someone who's worn a lot of different hats during his career, right? He's a guy who has played box safety, sub-package linebacker, free safety. He's played some in the slot. He's played outside corner at times. I think he even had some snaps at rush linebacker for the Broncos. So in my eyes, he's insurance for a few different players in Kansas City. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Tyrann Mathieu with his ability to kind of mix in and do all these different things. But He also could be more of like a Daniel Sorensen type of player who has kind of like, 1, 2, 3 defined roles within the defense. Plays that free safety position, plays the sub package linebacker position, and can kind of mix and match there as the defensive coordinator needs. Now, he's also going to be someone who's going to motivate a lot of competition at the bottom of the roster. And that's what it's really all about this time of year, right? Creating that competition to ensure that you are fielding the best team possible. So even at the bottom of the roster, you're going to want to have things as competitive as possible to ensure that you get those top players on your team. Now, overall, when you look at these two moves as a whole, I think it's just to create that competition, but also to create a deeper 90-man offseason roster. Both players are only on one-year deals, so it doesn't seem like they're going to stick with the team much longer past this season. But they're also not being paid a whole lot, so it's kind of low-risk, high-reward type of thing if they do pan out and play this season. Hughes probably has a stronger chance to make the team, make the 53-man roster and earn a second contract, but he'll have to prove that he can stay healthy and make a difference. And then the Park signing, it's interesting. It reminds me a little bit of Adrian Colbert and Tedrick Thompson, who the Chiefs brought in during training camp last season when Juan Thornhill was recovering from the knee injury. I think that he's going to have a tougher time making the team because the Chiefs typically don't carry as many safeties on the 53-man roster as they do cornerbacks. And I just tend to believe that right now, a direct competition between a veteran like Armani Watts, who's been in the system for a long time, and a player like Parks, I think that Watts is going to win out. He played the most snaps on special teams of any player for the Chiefs last season.
After 12 seasons in Kansas City, Tamba Hali calls it a career. He signed a one-day contract with the team, officially retiring with the organization. Chiefs Wire contributor Talon Graff has more on Tamba Hali's legacy in Kansas City.
Hey, Chiefs Kingdom. So recently, Chiefs legend Tamba Hali retired officially as a Chief. He signed a contract at the whole kit and caboodle. It was a really cool moment, really cool sentiment from the Chiefs to be able to offer that to Tamba. He played 10 high-level years in a Chiefs uniform. From the moment he stepped onto the field as a rookie in 2006, I think the 20th overall draft pick, instantaneously upgraded the defense. And he, along with Justin Houston and Eric Berry and Derek Johnson and Dontari Poe, at one point that Chiefs defense was Super Bowl contending. Now, obviously, with Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey and Hill and obviously the offense, people forget how good our defense used to be. Obviously, the 90s defenses gets a lot of that credit, right? They get a lot of the airtime, if you will, when you talk about Chiefs defenses. But man, that early, late 2000s run was special in my eyes, especially because of Tamba Hali and just the kind of person and playmaker and guy he was to represent the Kansas City Chiefs organization. And now obviously he's gone into philanthropy and charity work, and he's doing a lot of stuff for his home country of Liberia, which is huge. Andy Reid has spoken highly of Tamba, and there's really not a lot of bad things you can say about Tamba. I'm sure you can find some, which everybody, has stuff you can say bad about him. But man, Tamba Hali did everything he could for this Chiefs organization, and the fact that he never really signed with anybody else. He never wore another helmet, another uniform. He definitely belongs in the ring of honor inside Arrowhead Stadium. He belongs mentioned with some of the greatest Chiefs of all time. And let me tell you, watching number 91 doing his thing and helping the defense be the best that they could possibly be, it's definitely an emotional one. For me, Tamba was right in the thick of when I really started paying attention to football. I remember Derek Johnson was such a big, a fan favorite of mine, and Tamba Hali was right there with them. And then Justin, like I said, all those guys, man, that group was so fun to watch. But it's that's part of life. That's part of football. One door closes, another one opens, and everybody knows that football is it's chapters. there's never, playing football anyway. You could obviously have a life in football, but playing football is only always going to be a chapter of your life, and we never really know how long that chapter is going to be. And Tamba Hali was blessed enough to have a really long chapter and a really fun and interesting chapter, and the entire thing happened with Kansas City, and for me, that's a really special thing, and not a lot of guys get to experience that, especially the further we get into, free agency and deeper in money and all. Guys are going to bounce around. I mean, Rodgers and Brady, all these guys are just icons with certain teams. Now it's looking like, I think that's going to happen more and more, but Tamba Hali is a rare one. And, happy to see him be able to walk, right off into the sunset as a Chief, and he definitely deserves everything that he got to him, and all the honors and the Pro Bowls and the successes. And so yeah, Tamba, hey, happy trails, buddy. Thank you for everything you did for the Chiefs organization, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this next chapter of your life is handled, and nothing but good things for you, my man.
On behalf of Charles Goldman, Talon Graff, and the entire Chiefs Wire team, I'm Easton Jr. Check us out next time for a new episode of Chiefs Wire TV.